The planet Orlith had long been a world of shadow and light, a place where great cities of crystal towers gleamed in the sun, yet much of its land remained wild and untamed. The Queen of Orlith, Cerelia, moved silently through the forests on the outskirts of her capital, her thoughts heavy with worry. Her daughters had been lost for many cycles, taken during the chaos of a war that had left scars across the galaxy. Every day without them felt like a lifetime, and yet she had refused to give in to despair. She had a mission, and she would see it through, no matter the cost. Cerelia's mind drifted back to the day they had been taken. She remembered the fear in her daughters' eyes, the way they had clung to her even as enemies tore them away. Since then, she had sent out scouts, allies, and even ventured herself into the stars to search. Many worlds had turned up nothing. And then a faint trail had appeared, leading her far from Orlith to a small, blue and green world humans called Earth. The Queen's arrival on Earth had not been without difficulty. Humans were not inherently hostile, but they were cautious and territorial. She had taken great care to remain unseen at first, watching the land from a distance, observing their ways. Cities were small compared to Orlith, but there was something remarkable about humans. They were clever, resourceful, and surprisingly strong-willed. More than anything, she realized they had compassion. Perhaps it was this compassion that had allowed her daughters to survive here, in a place entirely foreign to them. It was in a quiet forest clearing, not far from a small human settlement, that Cerelia finally saw what she had been searching for. The sight brought both relief and a new wave of fear. There, curled together under the shade of a towering oak, were her daughters. They huddled close to a young human who knelt beside them, speaking softly in a language they seemed to understand. The human's hands moved gently, offering warmth and food. His presence was steady and calm, a shield against the cold night and the dangers of the forest. The daughters, small and fragile after months of uncertainty, had instinctively sought safety in someone who radiated kindness. Cerelia could see the fear in their eyes, the cautious hope, and she knew she had to act carefully. She could not risk startling them, nor could she confront the human too abruptly. From the shadows, she studied him. He was unlike any being she had encountered in the stars. His frame was upright and muscular, yet unassuming. There was a quiet confidence in the way he moved, a patience that spoke of inner strength. Most remarkable was the way her daughters seemed drawn to him, trusting him in a way that even she had not always experienced. It was a bond formed not by blood, but by instinct and compassion. The human noticed her presence eventually, sensing a subtle change in the air. He stood slowly, his eyes scanning the trees before settling on her. There was no fear, only curiosity. He tilted his head slightly, acknowledging her silently. Cerelia stepped forward, careful not to alarm her daughters. "My children," she spoke softly, her voice carrying the authority of a queen but the gentleness of a mother. "You are safe now. I could not leave them alone. Your actions honor not only you but your species." Now, in the presence of both their mother and this human who had cared for them, they were beginning to feel something they had not felt for a long time: hope. The queen knelt slowly, careful to lower herself to their level. She extended her hands, and her daughters moved cautiously into her embrace. The relief was palpable, a bond reaffirmed after too long apart. Yet even in this moment of reunion, Cerelia sensed that the world was not entirely safe. There were eyes watching them, forces that had once threatened her daughters, and she knew they would not give up so easily. She turned to the human. "You have shown them a kind of courage and care that is rare. I would ask for your continued assistance, if you are willing." Their courage was not rooted in power alone, but in resourcefulness, empathy, and a willingness to act even in the face of great danger. It was this spirit, she realized, that had kept her daughters alive on a planet foreign to them. Night fell over the clearing, and the forest seemed to come alive with whispers of the wind through the trees. Cerelia, her daughters, and the human sat together, sharing warmth and stories in silence. The daughters began to speak softly, recounting fragments of their journey, the fear, and the small kindnesses that had helped them survive. The human listened, offering comfort and small reassurances, while Cerelia absorbed every detail, noting the resilience her daughters had shown. She marveled at the human once more. He did not command, nor did he demand. He acted, guided by instinct and conscience. His bravery was quiet but unshakable. It was different from the strength of warriors she had known among her people, yet equally powerful. As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, Cerelia knew that their reunion was only the beginning. Her daughters were safe for now, but the galaxy held dangers that would not easily be avoided. She would need allies, and perhaps, she thought, humans could be among them, not merely for their strength, but for their spirit, which had already proven invaluable. The human stood and offered his hand to the daughters. "Come on," he said gently. "We should find somewhere safer. Night in the forest is beautiful, but it is not always kind." Even in this small corner of the universe, the seeds of something extraordinary were being planted. Here was a human, ordinary by his own standards, whose simple acts of kindness had preserved life and inspired hope. Here were her daughters, resilient and full of potential, learning once more to trust, to love, and to survive. And here was she, a queen from a distant world, recognizing the power of human spirit and the truth that sometimes the bravest beings are not the strongest, but those who choose to care when it matters most. The forest opened up to a clearing where sunlight streamed through gaps in the canopy. The air smelled of earth and growing things. Cerelia paused for a moment, taking in the scene. Her daughters moved freely now, laughing softly as they explored the edges of the clearing. The human watched them, his expression calm but alert. He understood that in this world, care and vigilance had to coexist. For the first time in many cycles, Cerelia allowed herself to relax. The journey was far from over, but the first step had been taken. She had found her daughters, and they were safe, alive, and learning the strength of a human heart. She knew the path ahead would require courage, cooperation, and perhaps new understanding between worlds, but for now there was peace. The human spoke quietly, almost to himself, as he watched the daughters play. "They are amazing," he said, "strong and smart, and yet still so full of wonder. It's incredible to see them like this." The forest seemed to hold its breath, as if acknowledging the beginning of something rare and important. In the distance, the sounds of earth continued, birds, wind, and the subtle hum of life. Yet in that clearing, time seemed to pause. A queen had found her daughters, and a human had shown the strength of his heart. Together, they faced a future unknown, ready to meet whatever challenges awaited. And so, in the quiet morning light, a story of trust, courage, and human spirit began, a story that would carry them through dangers, challenges, and discoveries far beyond the edges of any world they had known. The morning sun filtered gently through the trees, casting golden patterns on the forest floor. The daughters of Queen Cerelia had awakened to the warmth of sunlight and the calm presence of the human who had saved them. They were still wary, their memories of fear and loss fresh, but there was a subtle spark of curiosity and wonder in their eyes. The human, whose name was Elias, watched over them carefully, moving with a quiet patience that seemed to reassure them. Cerelia walked beside them, her gaze alternating between her daughters and Elias. She had observed him closely the night before and had begun to understand something remarkable. Humans were not only capable of great physical feats, but they possessed a rare empathy. They could see fear and respond with understanding, act without expectation of reward, and protect others simply because it was right. This quality, so ordinary to him, was extraordinary to her. "Mother," one of the daughters spoke softly, her voice tinged with hesitation, "will we always be in danger? There are those who would seek to harm us, but together we can be strong." They had clung to him instinctively, and now they understood why. The day stretched before them, quiet and full of potential. Cerelia had chosen to remain near the human settlement, not directly among humans, but close enough that Elias could navigate the world for them. The daughters learned quickly from him. He showed them how to move through the forest silently, how to find water and food without drawing attention, and how to listen to the signs of approaching danger. They were quick learners, naturally intelligent and agile, and Elias marveled at how resilient they were despite the hardships they had endured. As they rested by a small stream, Cerelia finally allowed herself a moment to speak openly with Elias. "You have done something remarkable," she said. "You have cared for my children without knowing their full story, without expecting anything in return. On my planet, such acts are rare. They are often guided by duty or self-interest, not by simple compassion. I guess I've always believed that helping others is just the right thing to do," he said. "Doesn't matter who they are or where they come from. They needed help, so I helped." She began to realize that humans had qualities her people often overlooked: courage not tied to authority, innovation born of necessity, and loyalty forged through choice rather than obligation. It was clear now why her daughters had survived on this world. The daughters began to talk more openly as the day progressed. They described fragments of their journey, the strange lands they had seen, the cold nights when fear had gripped them, and the moments of hope that had kept them moving. Elias listened patiently, asking gentle questions, encouraging them to remember details and offering reassurance. The daughters began to laugh softly, the sound fragile but genuine. It was a sound Cerelia had longed to hear, and it filled her with warmth. Despite the calm, Cerelia's instincts told her that danger was never far away. The warlord who had orchestrated the kidnapping of her daughters had not been idle. Somewhere in the galaxy, he was preparing to claim what he believed was rightfully his. The human, unaware of this greater threat, had nonetheless prepared the daughters in his own way, teaching them to move cautiously, to observe carefully, and to rely on their instincts. Cerelia recognized the wisdom in his methods and silently resolved to combine them with her own knowledge and experience. As night approached, the forest took on a different character. Shadows lengthened, and the sounds of nocturnal creatures filled the air. Elias guided the group to a small, concealed clearing where they could rest safely. The daughters curled together under a light blanket, while Cerelia observed from a short distance. She allowed herself a rare moment of reflection, considering the human who had become their guardian. His courage was not born of strength alone, but of intelligence, empathy, and a willingness to act decisively when necessary. She realized that humans were in many ways an example of what her people could aspire to: strength tempered by compassion, intelligence balanced with intuition. During the night, Cerelia remained vigilant. Her daughters slept, unaware of the watchful eyes of the forest, and Elias had settled nearby, resting lightly but alert. A rustle in the underbrush caused her to tense briefly, but it was only a small creature moving through the leaves. Yet the reminder of potential threats was enough to keep her alert. She could not underestimate the dangers of Earth, nor the reach of those who sought to harm her family. The following morning brought new lessons. Elias taught the daughters how to recognize human settlements from a distance, how to blend into their surroundings, and how to communicate without drawing attention. They practiced silently, moving through the forest as though it were second nature. Cerelia watched them, pride swelling in her chest. The human had not only kept them alive, but had strengthened them in ways she had not anticipated. Over the next few days, the bond between the human and the daughters deepened. They began to rely on him not just for protection, but for guidance and reassurance. They learned his routines, the way he observed the environment, and how he used small tools and knowledge to make life safer and easier. Cerelia observed this quietly, understanding that humans had a unique combination of adaptability and courage that made them extraordinary allies. One afternoon, as they rested near a small hill overlooking the forest, Cerelia spoke to Elias about the future. "There are those who will come for us," she said. "They will not stop until they have found my daughters. We must be ready." They were beginning to understand the larger reality of the galaxy, the dangers that had taken them from their home, and the strength of the human who had protected them. Their fear had not vanished, but it had transformed into cautious courage, guided by trust and growing confidence. Cerelia decided to teach her daughters in her own way. She showed them techniques for observation and awareness, ways to move quietly, and the importance of patience and timing. The human watched and learned as well, absorbing insights into a world beyond his own understanding. Together, they created a partnership built on respect, learning, and mutual reliance. The bond between human and alien grew stronger with each passing day. Elia's resourcefulness complemented Cerelia's experience, and the daughters' curiosity and resilience added a layer of adaptability that neither could have anticipated. They became a small, self-contained unit, capable of navigating the forest, surviving potential dangers, and facing the challenges that awaited beyond Earth. Evenings were filled with quiet reflection and storytelling. The daughters shared tales of their home planet, of its beauty, its culture, and the values their mother had instilled in them. Elias listened intently, asking questions, marveling at the differences and similarities between their worlds. Cerelia spoke of leadership, of responsibility, and of the strength found in unity. The daughters absorbed these lessons eagerly, their spirits growing stronger with each passing day. One night, as they gathered under a sky filled with stars, Cerelia spoke softly to her daughters. "You have survived because of your courage and your trust," she said, "but the galaxy is vast and danger is never far. You must continue to grow, to learn, and to trust not only yourselves but also those who have earned that trust." They had faced fear, hunger, and uncertainty, and they had emerged stronger. Their journey was far from over, but they had discovered something vital: the power of trust, the importance of courage, and the strength found in unlikely allies. In the quiet of the forest, a human and an alien queen stood together, watching over children who had endured the unimaginable. They were bound not by species or tradition, but by shared purpose and the unspoken understanding that survival depended on more than strength alone. It depended on compassion, intelligence, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. As dawn approached, the forest seemed to breathe with a sense of peace and anticipation. The daughters were no longer simply lost children. They were survivors, learners, and fighters in their own right. Elias had given them protection and guidance. Cerelia had given them love and instruction, and together they were preparing for whatever challenges lay ahead. The galaxy beyond Earth was full of unknown threats, but in that small forest clearing, a remarkable alliance had formed. One that would face the dangers of the universe together, strengthened by trust, courage, and the enduring spirit of humanity. And so the days passed, filled with learning, growth, and quiet moments of connection. The daughters laughed more freely, their fear tempered by the presence of both their mother and Elias. Cerelia allowed herself to hope, recognizing that survival was only the first step, and that the future, though uncertain, held promise because they faced it together. The bond they had formed would become the foundation for what was to come, a testament to the extraordinary strength of humans and the enduring love of a mother. In the heart of the forest, they had found safety, understanding, and a glimpse of the courage needed to face the wider universe. The forest was unusually quiet that evening. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and earth, yet beneath the calm, Cerelia felt an unease. Her daughters played near the edge of a small clearing, their laughter soft but cautious, while Elias moved silently around the perimeter, his senses alert to every sound, every shift in the shadows. Cerelia's instincts were sharper than any human's, and though she had come to trust Elias, she could not ignore the warning signals that ran through her mind like a pulse. Somewhere beyond the trees, she knew, there were eyes watching, waiting for a moment of weakness. The warlord who had once taken her daughters was clever, relentless, and dangerous. He would not stop until he had reclaimed what he thought belonged to him. Elias sensed it too. He paused, listening intently to the subtle sounds of the forest, the rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig, the distant cry of a bird. His eyes narrowed. "We're not alone," he said quietly, keeping his voice calm but firm. "Something's out there, it's not human." Cerelia stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on each of their shoulders. "Stay calm," she said. "Trust what you have learned, we will face this together." Cerelia admired it. Humans were capable of incredible courage in the face of danger, and Elias embodied that courage perfectly. From the shadows, a small group of figures emerged, advanced scouts sent by the warlord. Their armor glinted faintly in the dim light, and their movements were precise, calculated. They were strong, but not invincible. Elias had already anticipated their approach. Using the natural terrain, he led the group into a narrow corridor formed by the trees where their movement would be restricted. The daughters watched from behind a thick trunk, wide-eyed but silent. Their mother whispered encouragement. "Remember what we taught you. Stay hidden. Observe, but do not act unless I signal you." The girls nodded, clutching each other's hands. They had learned quickly in the days since their reunion, and now that knowledge would be their shield. Elias crouched low, moving closer to the scouts without revealing himself. He had studied their formation, their patterns, and their likely tactics. His plan was simple but effective. Delay them, confuse them, and buy time for Cerelia and the daughters to move to safety. He tossed a small stone to trigger a faint noise in a different part of the forest. The scouts turned immediately, their attention divided. Cerelia watched from a distance, her daughters close by. She could see Elias working, his mind sharp and precise. Humans were remarkable in their ability to adapt, to improvise, and to act decisively. It was this adaptability that made him such a valuable ally. Her daughters, once terrified and fragile, now mirrored his calm determination, learning that courage often meant acting with thought and patience rather than recklessness. The scouts advanced cautiously, unaware of the traps and obstacles Elias had prepared. Fallen branches, carefully placed stones, and the natural dips of the terrain all worked to slow their progress. Elias' heart beat steadily. He had faced danger before, but this was unlike anything he had known. These were not wild animals, nor random threats. They were highly trained operatives, and they sought the daughters specifically. Cerelia stepped forward when the scouts were fully distracted. Using a subtle wave of her hand, she signaled her daughters to move. They followed her carefully, sticking to the shadows, their small feet barely making a sound on the forest floor. Elias stayed behind, drawing the scouts further into the forest. Each move he made was calculated, designed to exploit the scouts' assumptions and overconfidence. The scouts, frustrated by the unexpected delays and diversions, began to split up. Elias seized the opportunity, creating small but effective barriers, leading the majority in a looping path away from the daughters. His knowledge of the terrain and quick thinking allowed them to avoid direct confrontation while still maintaining pressure. It was a delicate balance, and any misstep could be disastrous. As the night deepened, the daughters and Cerelia reached a safer part of the forest, where the trees formed a dense natural barrier. They stopped to rest briefly, catching their breath. The daughters whispered in awe. "He's amazing," one of them said softly. "The human, he's keeping them away from us." "You have both survived because of these qualities." Despite the danger, he remained calm, guided by instinct and a sense of responsibility that went beyond duty. The scouts were becoming frustrated, their formation disorganized, and their confidence shaken. Elias knew he could not fight them all directly. Instead, he relied on misdirection, using the forest itself as an ally. Fallen trees, sudden drops, and natural obstacles forced the scouts to slow, giving him the advantage. After what felt like hours, the scouts began to retreat, unable to navigate the forest effectively and increasingly wary of unseen threats. Elias allowed them to withdraw, understanding that sometimes survival required patience and strategy rather than brute force. He moved quickly back towards Cerelia and her daughters, ensuring they were safe and unharmed. When he reunited with them, the daughters ran to him, hugging him tightly. Their small arms clung to him with gratitude and relief. "You saved us," one whispered, her voice trembling but filled with awe. Elias smiled, his expression gentle. "You saved yourselves," he said. "I just made sure no one stopped you." They had learned quickly, not just survival skills, but the meaning of bravery, teamwork, and trust. In Elias, they had seen a different kind of heroism, one not defined by power or authority, but by action, thought, and care for others. That night, as they settled in a hidden grove, the atmosphere was calm but tense. Cerelia knew the warlord would not give up so easily, and she sensed the need to prepare further. The daughters lay close to her, their small hands intertwined, while Elias kept watch nearby. Together, they formed a circle of vigilance and trust, a bond strengthened by shared experience and the challenges they had overcome. In the quiet hours, Cerelia spoke softly to Elias. "You have proven your worth, not through combat alone, but through strategy, foresight, and heart. Your actions remind me that courage is not measured by strength alone, but by the will to act for the protection of others. You and your daughters taught me as much as I taught them." She realized that the future survival of her daughters, and perhaps her people, might depend not only on alien strength, but on alliances with humans who possessed qualities beyond raw power. The daughters, now more confident and resilient, began to speak of their hopes and fears. They asked questions about the world, about humans, and about what they might face next. Elias answered patiently, guiding them through understanding, while Cerelia supplemented his lessons with wisdom and experience from her own world. Together, they taught them not just to survive, but to thrive, to think, and to act with purpose. As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, Cerelia reflected on the events of the night. The scouts had been defeated not by brute force, but by the combination of human ingenuity, alien skill, and the daughter's own resilience. She realized that survival in the galaxy required more than physical power. It required intelligence, courage, and cooperation across species. Elias approached her, his expression thoughtful. "We can't stay here forever," he said. "They'll send more, and next time it might not be scouts. We need a plan to move to stay ahead of them." They had survived danger before, but the unknown always carried a weight. Yet now, with their mother and Elias beside them, they felt capable of facing what lay ahead. They understood that survival required courage, wisdom, and the willingness to trust those who had earned it. Together, they began to plan their next steps. They mapped out routes through the forest, identified potential safe havens, and considered ways to avoid detection. Cerelia taught them about awareness, patience, and foresight, while Elias contributed knowledge of human technology, observation, and practical strategy. It was a partnership unlike any other, a human, an alien queen, and her daughters working as one. Each brought strengths the others lacked, and together they were stronger than the sum of their parts. The warlord's reach was vast, but they had learned that courage, intelligence, and trust could overcome even the most persistent threats. As the sun rose fully over the horizon, casting warm light across the forest, the group moved forward. The daughters were no longer frightened children. They were survivors, learners, and fighters in their own right. Elias remained vigilant, guiding and protecting them, while Cerelia watched with a quiet pride. They had faced danger and emerged stronger, and though challenges lay ahead, they were united by trust, courage, and the human spirit that had already changed their lives. The forest seemed to hum with promise, as if acknowledging their determination. The future was uncertain, but together they would face it with intelligence, bravery, and heart. The forest seemed calmer that morning, though Cerelia knew better than to trust appearances. The air smelled of damp earth and pine, carrying the quiet hum of life, yet every rustle of leaves reminded her that danger could come from anywhere. Her daughters moved cautiously beside her, their steps measured, while Elias scanned their surroundings with practiced vigilance. The events of the previous nights had taught them all that safety was temporary and vigilance was essential. Cerelia had called them to a small clearing where sunlight streamed through the trees, highlighting the vibrant greens and the gentle flow of a nearby stream. She looked at Elias and nodded. "It is time," she said softly. "Time to prepare in earnest. The warlord's reach extends far, and we must ensure that my daughters can survive and grow strong no matter what comes next." They had grown noticeably in the past days, learning to move through the forest with quiet grace, responding to commands without hesitation, and trusting both their mother and Elias. They were learning not only to survive but to think ahead, to anticipate, and to act with purpose. Cerelia felt pride mixed with concern. These were lessons they had been forced to learn too quickly, but she knew their strength was growing with every passing day. Cerelia decided to begin with observation exercises. She instructed her daughters to find hidden vantage points within the clearing and report what they could see without being detected. Elias joined them, offering guidance on how to use subtle movements, shadows, and natural cover to remain unseen. The daughters followed his advice closely, moving with careful precision. Each small success built confidence, while each misstep was gently corrected. "You are learning quickly," Cerelia said, watching their careful movements. "Observe not only with your eyes, but with your mind. Think ahead, consider what others might do, not just what you would do yourself." They were beginning to understand that survival was more than strength. It was awareness, intelligence, and cooperation. They had already learned to trust Elias instinctively, but now they were learning to respect his skills and strategies. As the day progressed, the training intensified. Cerelia instructed them in basic defensive maneuvers, combining her alien techniques with lessons adapted from human strategies. Elias demonstrated ways to use the environment to their advantage, teaching them how to move silently, set small barriers, and anticipate threats. The daughters absorbed it all, their eyes bright with determination and curiosity. During a break by the stream, one of the daughters spoke quietly. "Mother, Elias is amazing. He seems to know exactly what to do, even when the danger is close. You will need to understand and respect that if you are to survive and thrive in this galaxy." They were not part of the warlord's forces, but they were dangerous nonetheless. Elias noticed them first, signaling silently to the daughters and Cerelia. "Remember your training," he whispered. "Use your senses, stay calm, and follow our plan." They observed the creatures, noting their patterns, and positioned themselves to avoid detection. Elias and Cerelia guided them subtly, ready to intervene if necessary. The creatures moved closer, sniffing and exploring, but the careful planning and preparation allowed the group to remain unnoticed. After tense moments, the creatures lost interest and moved on, leaving the group unharmed. The daughters exhaled in relief, but Cerelia took the opportunity to emphasize the lesson. "Strength alone will not keep you safe," she said. "Awareness, patience, and careful thought are just as important. Elias has shown you that, and now you see it for yourselves. We must prepare for a larger threat, one that will require all our abilities and coordination. Together, we can anticipate and counter his moves." Over the following days, the training intensified further. Cerelia worked with her daughters on agility, observation, and awareness, while Elias introduced more advanced strategies based on human ingenuity and the use of natural resources. They practiced moving silently, setting simple traps, and responding to potential threats without panic. The daughters were quick learners, their confidence growing with every exercise. One morning, as they prepared to move to a safer location, Cerelia spoke quietly to Elias. "Your presence has changed them. They have grown stronger, braver, and wiser because of your guidance. I have watched, and I see now that humans possess a kind of courage and intelligence that is rare in the galaxy. They had come to understand the depth of what Elias was teaching and the importance of trust, courage, and cooperation. They felt more capable than ever before, ready to face challenges with confidence and determination. As they moved through the forest, Cerelia considered the larger picture. The warlord's forces were still out there, and the daughter's safety depended on continued vigilance, preparation, and teamwork. She realized that the lessons they were learning now would serve them not only on Earth but across the galaxy, preparing them for challenges they could not yet imagine. Elias noticed the shift in the daughters as well. They were no longer passive or fearful. They were active participants in their survival. They moved with purpose, observed with attention, and thought strategically. He could see the growing bond between them, their mother, and himself, a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared goals. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the forest in warm hues of gold and orange, Cerelia gathered the group together. "We have grown stronger," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But the greatest test is yet to come. The warlord will not stop until he reaches us. We must continue to prepare, to learn, and to trust one another completely. Together we can face whatever comes. We have the skills, the knowledge, and the courage. Nothing can stop us if we work as one." They understood that their journey was far from over, but they were ready to face it, strengthened by the guidance of both their mother and Elias. As night fell, the forest seemed alive with the quiet rhythm of life, yet beneath it, a tension lingered. The warlord's forces would return, and when they did, the group would need every ounce of skill, courage, and intelligence they possessed. But for the moment, they rested, confident in their abilities and in one another. Cerelia watched her daughters, now more resilient and confident, and Elias, whose ingenuity and courage had already proven invaluable. She realized that this alliance, born of necessity, had become something far more significant, a testament to the strength of cooperation, trust, and the human spirit. The daughters lay close to their mother, whispering softly to one another, while Elias kept watch nearby. Together, they represented a new kind of strength, one that combined alien power with human ingenuity, courage, and compassion. It was a strength that the warlord could not easily anticipate or overcome. As the stars appeared above, Cerelia reflected on what had been accomplished. Her daughters were no longer lost or frightened. They were learning, growing, and thriving. Elias had proven himself not only a protector but a teacher and ally, guiding them with wisdom and courage. The bond they shared was becoming unbreakable, and Cerelia knew that this unity would be their greatest weapon against any threat. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in many cycles, Cerelia felt a sense of hope. They had faced danger, learned from it, and grown stronger together. And when the warlord came again, they would meet him not as prey, but as a united force, prepared, capable, and unyielding. The forest held its quiet magic, the soft rustle of leaves and the gentle trickle of the stream, a reminder that life continued even amidst the looming threats. The daughters drifted to sleep, secure in the knowledge that they were protected, guided, and loved. Elias watched them with quiet vigilance, while Cerelia felt a deep sense of pride and gratitude. They were ready for the challenges to come. Together, human and alien, mother and daughters, they would face the galaxy with courage, intelligence, and heart. And nothing, not even the warlord's relentless pursuit, could break the bond they had forged. The warning came at dawn. The forest did not wake the way it usually did. There were no birds calling from the trees, no small animals moving through the undergrowth. The air felt heavy, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Elias noticed it first. He had learned through long nights of watch that silence was often more dangerous than noise. He rose slowly and scanned the horizon. Cerelia felt it a moment later. A sharp tension ran through her senses, ancient and unmistakable. The warlord had found them. She moved to her daughters at once, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. The girls did not panic. They had changed. Their eyes were alert, their breathing steady. Training and trust had replaced fear. "He is here," Cerelia said quietly. "This will be the final test. Then we make it count." "He believes strength alone wins battles," she said. "That belief will end him." Natural barriers guided movement exactly where they wanted it to go. The enemy advanced. They expected fear. They found resistance. A sudden collapse of ground forced the first wave to halt, not a trap meant to harm, but to delay and separate. Confusion spread, signals crossed. Elias used the moment perfectly. He moved like the forest itself, appearing where least expected, drawing attention, then vanishing. He used sound, light, and movement to pull the enemy apart. Every action was precise. Every step had purpose. The daughters watched and learned just as they had been taught. When one unit pushed too far, Cerelia intervened. She did not rush forward in anger. She waited, timed her movement, and redirected the force with controlled power. Her actions were calm, measured, and exact. This was not chaos. This was coordination. The warlord finally stepped into view. He was tall, imposing, wrapped in dark armor that reflected no light. His voice echoed across the clearing, cold and certain. "You hide behind a human," he said to Cerelia. "You shame your crown." Not recklessly, not emotionally. They acted exactly as trained. They observed, waited, and chose their moment. When the warlord's forces pressed forward, the daughters guided the environment against them. Paths narrowed. Visibility dropped. Movement slowed. Every advantage of size and strength was reduced. Elias coordinated everything, adjusting plans in real time. He did not command loudly. He trusted, he adapted. This was human strength at its purest, not domination, not destruction, but problem-solving under pressure. The warlord advanced himself, pushing through obstacles with sheer force. He reached the center of the clearing and found Cerelia waiting. "You have delayed the inevitable," he said. "No," she replied. "You have misunderstood it." Not behind, beside, the warlord hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his expression. "You taught them to stand with others," Cerelia said. "You taught them fear. The human taught them courage." But not as planned. Every move he made was anticipated. Every step met resistance, not from power, but from coordination. The daughters worked together, supporting their mother, protecting each other, trusting completely. Elias stayed mobile, constantly adjusting, removing advantages, forcing mistakes. The warlord grew frustrated, and frustration led to error. When he overcommitted, Cerelia acted not to destroy him, but to end the threat. She disabled his armor, severed his control, and left him standing alone, stripped of command and certainty. The remaining forces withdrew. Silence returned to the forest. The warlord looked around, defeated not by strength, but by unity. He said nothing as he was taken away, his power broken by something he could not understand. Trust. The clearing stood quiet again. Elias exhaled slowly, only now allowing himself to feel the weight of what had passed. The daughters turned to their mother. "We did it," one said softly. Cerelia knelt and pulled them into her arms. "You did more than survive," she said. "You became more." "You're coming with us?" one asked hopefully. Elias smiled sadly. "Not this time. Just tell them we're better together." But somewhere among the stars, a queen ruled differently now. And two daughters carried with them the lesson of a human who proved that the greatest strength in the universe is not power.